While the NFL draft is right around the corner and we've all got rookie fever, there is still free agency going, and we just had two big signings today. Russell Wilson signing with the Giants and Stefon Diggs signing with the Patriots. Let's talk about it, what it means for fantasy. Let's break it all down here. And let's start with the Russell Wilson signing, because this is one we just saw, 3 or 4 days ago. The Giants also signed Jameis Winston. This is great for Malik Nabers and really the Giants offense as a whole, in my opinion, because now we know at a minimum going into next year, we're either going to have Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, and they still may draft, if Shader Sanders or Cam Ward falls to them at 3, they may still draft one of the rookies at 3. We'll see what they do. But regardless if they do or don't, this has got to be great for Malik Nabers, because whatever you think of Russell Wilson at this point of his career, no, he's not the Russ that used to cook back in the Seahawks day, but he's still an upgrade from, Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, all the terrible quarterbacks they had last year. And look at what Malik Nabers did with those quarterbacks. I think Malik Nabers truly does have top 5 wide receiver upside with Russell Wilson. But even better would be if it's Jameis Winston, because look, we have a track record now of Jameis Winston supporting, high-end, great wide receivers. I mean, Jerry Jeudy has done absolutely nothing his entire career. And then for that short stretch with Jameis Winston, he was one of the best wide receivers in all of fantasy. So you got to feel pretty good about Malik Nabers here, because we know at least it's going to be Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, maybe even one of the rookies. So I think this is good. It's probably good for the other wide receivers too. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton. I mean, no, these guys aren't going to be fantasy studs, but they're those type of guys that in a pinch you can start them. But certainly it's very good for Malik Nabers here. And it's good for Russell Wilson as well, because, last year, while he wasn't elite, of course, he still was serviceable for fantasy. And you got to think in this Giants offense, with Malik Nabers, he can once again be at least serviceable for fantasy. And we know Jameis Winston is starting. He's more than serviceable for fantasy purposes. Now let's talk about Stefon Diggs. This is a pretty big one here, because Diggs, obviously he was playing pretty well last year. Now his game has certainly changed. He's older now. That vertical part of his game was gone, but he was still a reliable underneath wide receiver, kind of a possession wide receiver, still a threat around the goal line. And I think that's what he can be for New England. I think the days of Stefon Diggs being a wide receiver 1 are definitely over now. And we got to remember, he's only 5 months removed from his ACL surgery. So, he's still coming back here. Not sure how he's going to be to start the season, but whenever he's out there, I think he's going to be one of those guys, like more of a floor play in fantasy, right? I don't think he's got huge upside. We got to remember, they hired Mike Vrabel. This is going to be an offense that's not going to be a high-powered, high-scoring offense. Go back to Tennessee. They're just going to want to run the ball, lean on the defense as much as they can, win ugly games. But they got to throw to somebody, and really, who else do they have? I mean, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas. I mean, really, there's not a lot. The 2 rookies they drafted, Polk and Baker, they did nothing last year. So there's definitely a path for Diggs here to be the wide receiver 1. Unfortunately, it's the wide receiver 1 on a low-volume passing offense, and one that probably won't score a ton of touchdowns. So I'm looking at Diggs as I'll certainly draft Diggs. I think he's worth drafting. But I'm going to view him more as like a floor wide receiver 3 rather than like an upside wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1. So if he's a guy I can get, in the kind of mid to late rounds of my draft as a bench wide receiver, I think he's perfect for that. Probably not a guy you want to be relying on. Hopefully you're not going to be relying on. But I think this is about as good of a landing spot as there could have been for Stefon Diggs this year. So I like this spot for Diggs. Now, he's not going to win you a fantasy championship or anything, but I think he'll at least be solid, assuming, of course, he's healthy and good to go some point early in the season. And, of course, keep it locked here. We're going to keep breaking down all the news as it rolls in. Not to mention, we are breaking down all the rookies right now. If you missed it, I broke down the 10 most overlooked rookies in this year's NFL draft. You can find out who they are right here.